October 19, 1992 Observer Newsletter. Bret wins first world title from Flair. NWA title history. Thes. By Observer staff. Wrestling Observer Newsletter. P.O. Box 1228, Campbell, California 950091228. October 19, 1992. Bret Hart captured the WWF title in a last-minute decision from Ric Flair in approximately 25 minutes on October 12 in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan at the television tapings amidst much WCW-like booking on the fly chaos. Hart won the title by submission using the sharpshooter after a superplex in what was said to have been an excellent match. The title change will be announced on the syndicated shows this weekend, although I'm not certain of a television air date, but it could be as soon as the October 19th primetime show. The title change was a decision made within the last week because the WWF needed to get a babyface, and Hart in particular, over big time in a hurry because of uncertainty as to the long-term future of Ultimate Warrior, see below, and short-term because Undertaker isn't expected back after undergoing shoulder surgery this past week until mid-December. Hart and a few others apparently knew about it by midweek, although I'm not sure Flair was one of the few others. As it turned out, Hart both sprained his ankle and broke one finger during the match and spent most of the night in the hospital, but was expected to wrestle October 13th in Regina for the second night of television anyway. In addition, Ted DiBiase and IRS were at the tapings with the WWF Tag Team titles, although it doesn't appear they defeated the Natural Disasters for the belts. Typhoon missed the entire weekend and wasn't at the Monday night television show. Either they are going to do the title change at a house show this week or next, so the change will be done before October 12th tapings start airing on television, October 24th, or it's simply a phantom title change. At press time, we have no other details on the whys for these events. The status of three of the biggest babyface names in this country remains the subject of much speculation, with the current status of all three somewhat up in the air as of press time Tuesday morning. The World Now We're Going Back to Wrestling Federation canceled its normal run of event center inserts that were to be taped the past week because a situation had developed with one of the main event performers, either Randy Savage, Ric Flair, Ultimate Warrior, or Razor Ramon. The title change with Hart beating Flair and the tag title change would certainly explain that away. However, later in the week came word from several sources that the party in question was Warrior, although exactly what the situation is has been unable to be confirmed. Warrior made all of his regularly scheduled weekend dates and was in Saskatoon Monday night for the first of 2 nights of television tapings. Ironically, there were an awful lot of people who didn't expect him there since word was out that the Flair Warrior House Show program was going to be canceled in favor of a Flair Hart program, which is definitely the case. In addition, there was talk that Hart would replace Warrior in the main event at Survivor Series in the tag team match, which may not be the case and officially as of Tuesday morning is not the case. As of Tuesday, Warrior had not been officially pulled from any house show cards, although the previous afternoon there had been talk of several Flair Warrior dates in November becoming Flair Hart. At the same time, WWF officials scheduled a meeting with Hulk Hogan to attempt to arrange his return. The meeting was scheduled for later in the week after company president Vince McMahon gets back from Canada from the tapings. Whether Hogan being asked to return as soon as possible, which just 2 weeks ago appeared to have no chance of happening until the spring, is due to a possible problem with Warrior or simply because of the business being in the condition it's in can only be speculated on. While there may have been demands made by Warrior, whether they be for more money or to work fewer dates, the only thing we have been able to confirm is that Warrior was upset about the finish given to him at one of the weekend house shows for a match with Flair. Warrior, who has been the WWF's second biggest babyface draw for the past several years, reportedly held up Titan during the summer of 1991. It was reported in one entertainment trade publication that he demanded the same money as Hogan for the SummerSlam 91 card, $150,000 as opposed to $50,000 were the reported figures, although our sources said he also wanted to work 2 or 3 days per week rather than a full schedule and wanted Hogan-like money. Warrior missed about a week's worth of house shows and some television tapings about a month before SummerSlam before it appeared the two sides had reached an agreement, and Warrior appeared in the SummerSlam tag match main event. However, immediately after the match, Warrior was officially suspended without pay for unprofessional behavior, with the word being that he would never return. However, with Hogan taking a hiatus from wrestling after the past WrestleMania, and Roddy Piper leaving as well, Titan brought Warrior back to headline the summer cards. Most of the trade ads that formerly featured Hogan as the focal point of the WWF were switched to Warrior, and many speculated the promotion had decided to go with Warrior as the new top star. It was generally felt Warrior could never completely get over as the marquee wrestler if Hogan were around after Warrior as champion in 1990 didn't draw well. Many have blamed that not on Warrior, but on the fact Hogan was continually pushed as the leading attraction and Warrior couldn't break out of Hogan's shadow. There is little doubt that at one point the plan was for Flair to put Warrior over for the WWF title and Warrior would then be attempted to be pushed as the superstar of the group. However, WWF attendance and television ratings have plummeted to their lowest level ever, which resulted in many cancellations, preemptions and shifts to weaker time slots, which has put the organization in its weakest position since it broke through nationally. In addition, the Flair Warrior title matches have consistently drawn surprisingly weak houses, even trailing the generally weak houses of the Savage Ramon program. Going into the fall, the Savage Ramon program looked to be a major question mark at the gate, which it has been, but it appeared Flair Warrior for the title would at least do average business. It is in no way definite right now that Hogan will return, and if Warrior leaves, and Hogan doesn't return, with the state the business is in right now, this could be a short-term damaging blow because there is no track record that Hart by himself on top can draw. While most believe Hogan would return, it would have to be on his own terms, which presumably would be less than a full-time schedule. The other name open to much speculation, as has been for several weeks, is Scott Steiner. Steiner reportedly had a locker room argument with WCW Vice President Bill Watts before the taping October 5th at Center Stage. After Monday night's taping, Steiner hasn't appeared at any house shows nor was he booked for Halloween Havoc and was taken off the booking sheets for house shows in early November. Since it has hardly been wrestling's best-kept secret that the Steiners were making noises about leaving, most likely for WWF but possibly for New Japan, the assumption was that he was finished. However, WCW officials said at press time that the Steiner brothers and Watts were still talking, and while they haven't agreed on a new deal, Scott is supposed to be in Dothan, Alabama for television tapings on Wednesday night, and the TV title match where he won the title from Rick Steamboat is still scheduled to run both in syndication and on cable this coming weekend. In addition, apparently Watts and Rick Steiner had a productive meeting later in the week. As far as negotiations are concerned, unconfirmed words are that this past week Watts was more open to actually negotiating. Supposedly he agreed to take out a few of the more draconian clauses in the deal in regards to control of the name Steiner Brothers, since that isn't their real name, in perpetuity. However, they were still not seeing eye to eye on the changes in the medical coverage. The Steiners should know about that stuff firsthand, since Rick has had 3 major muscle tears over the past few years, and Scott had the torn bicep in 1991. Supposedly the other holdup is the review period, in that the Steiners don't want it so the contract can be terminated after every 4-month period. Apparently the money offered on a 2-year deal, which is $750 base pay and $250 bonus pay per night, and Watts is willing to guarantee a minimum of 250 dates per year. So the contract in writing guarantees $187,500 per year pending successful 4-month performance reviews and is basically a $250,000 deal. It's a cut from the estimated $300,000 on the current contract, but still more money than they could get guaranteed anywhere else in wrestling, and certainly in line with as much or more than they could earn elsewhere the way the business looks right now. The money is said to not be a biggest problem issue with either side, so the holdup apparently isn't as much money as it is medical coverage and the review period. The Havoc card itself, which will be just days away when you read this, has not been officially announced from top to bottom. As of the end of the week, WCW officials were only making public the Sting vs. Jake Roberts spin the wheel match, Ron Simmons vs. Barbarian for the WCW title, Masachono vs. Rick Rude for the NWA title with 2 referees, Dustin Rhodes and Barry Windham vs. Terry Gordy and Steve Williams for the WCW and NWA tag team titles, Rick Rude vs. Nikita Koloff for the US title, Rick Steamboat vs. Brian Pillman and Tom Zenk and Tommy Gunn, Tom Brandy, and Shane Douglas vs. Michael Hayes and Arnold Anderson and Bobby Eaton. From what we understand, WCW wants to keep several things a mystery until match time on all pay-per-view shows, such as in this case, who the referees will be and Rude Chono, the gimmick match Sting and Roberts will have, etc. The other mystery is how these newly announced matches make any sense given what is being built up on television. The only things I know of that haven't been officially announced are that at one point this past week WCW continuously changes plans on a moment's notice, that Big Van Vader is being planned to wrestle Nikita Koloff, and supposedly, somehow they're going to work the storyline so that Rude's US title will be at stake. Kensuke Sasaki is supposed to be there, and one lineup I received listed Rhodes and Sasaki versus Gordy and Williams, so perhaps they'll be doing something with Barry Windham similar to the situation that aired on television this weekend where Windham arrived late to the building, or at one point were planning on something like that, but as mentioned, all plans are changed seemingly on a daily basis. As an educated guess, I'm expecting the referee Rude will pick for the Chono match to be Harley Race and Chono will pick Sasaki, and that Rhodes and Windham will team. I believe Medusa will be banned from ringside for that match, which I think will be announced on television maybe the weekend of the card. Aside from that, there will be 2 other matches, a Van Hammer and Johnny B. Bad vs. Vinny Vegas and Diamond Dallas Page tag match, and Steve Austin vs. Eric Watts. The dreaded WCW curse almost reared its ugly head last week when the threatened city employees strike, which caused WCW to move the Bash from Philadelphia to Albany, Georgia this past summer, was called for. In a rare example of WCW good luck on big shows, the strike was settled in one day. By a percentage basis, that means odds seem to be good that this year's World Series will go 7 games, in which case Game 7 would go head-to-head. John Muse compiled his latest list of all the 4-star matches that he's either seen or have been reported here thus far in 1992 through the early part of September. Ranked by the most are 1. Toshiaki Kawada and Mitsuharu Misawa 15 each, who have their first singles match against one another on September 21st. 4. Jushin Liger and Kenta Kobashi 14. 5. Jumbo Tsuruta 13. 6. Toshio Yamada 11, 7. Manami Toyota, Kyoko Inoue and Akira Tao 10, 10. Tsuyoshi Kikuchi 9, 11. Asia Kong, Marco Yoshida and Akira Hokuto 8, 14. Keiji Muto, Terry Gordy, Takako Inoue, Bison Kimura 7, 18. Steve Williams and Brian Pillman 6, 20. Yoshinari Ogawa, Pegasus Kid, El Samurai, Saki Hasegawa 5. Supposedly we can expect to see a noticeable product mix change in the WWF, starting with the television shows that aired this past weekend. On all the shows, the commentators talked about stricter enforcement of existing rules as a new directive from Jack Tunney, and talked of the appointment of Sergeant Slaughter as a rule enforcer / guest ref, etc. Actually, on the Superstar show, Vince McMahon sounded almost, but not quite, like Bill Watts did his first weekend, with the emphasis on going back to wrestling, and with Slaughter in almost the exact same role as Ole Anderson. McMahon didn't go so far back in time publicly, such as removing the mats and specifying immediate DQs for top rope rules, but apparently the performers in reality have been similar stricter performance guidelines. The matches are supposed to work realistically with an emphasis on holds. All action is to stay inside the ring except for the main eventers, who have more latitude. Yelling at the crowd for cheap heat as a shortcut to avoid actually wrestling is supposed to be limited. Managers are supposed to not distract from the match nor get involved except in specified finishes. In fact, all managers have been told to sit in their chair and not get up until the finish for the duration of the matches. Ray Stevens, who was considered the best worker of the 1960s by many people, is there to teach this old style of work to the newer wrestlers. Obviously, the belief is the company has gone too far in a certain direction, and with popularity on the wane, it's time to get away from the heavy fantasy. To do this right is going to require something of a talent overhaul, because there are plenty of names on the current roster that won't fit in if they are really going to a wrestling-based product. While many have already joked that they are trying to copy a formula that is failing miserably with WCW, the truth is only WWF, with its aura as being the major league, can really succeed in any serious public re-education. However, having been told all that, and having seen more actual wrestling on television over the weekend, you still see an awful lot of stuff on television that makes this sound schizophrenic. If you want people to go back to suspending disbelief, well, you can have a few gimmick characters. What makes them gimmicks and different is a base of wrestlers who are more than just gimmicks. Right now, the base of the product, the non-gimmick performers, isn't there. While the reports we've gotten from house shows is that the match quality has improved, there are still few of what would be called good matches, and certainly no more than one per show. Ric Flair's main events that go more than 20 minutes continue to be of the standard of Flair's reputation, but you are only going to get new fans to the arenas and old fans back to the arenas for the most part through television. There need to be structural changes in the television show, or else people will see it as just the same old stuff that people have been tuning away from in record numbers. The new emphasis on Bob Backlund, and those interviews about him returning for title shots, seem already outdated. Certainly looks like the backdrop for something of a directional change in the product, as is the push of Bret Hart to the top. Let's see how patient everyone is. It wasn't that many months ago that Bill Watts came in going to make great changes in the product, and here we are 5 months later, and an average fan would be hard-pressed to tell the difference in this product from the old product, and Jake Roberts is running around threatening babyfaces with a snake, which fits in perfectly with a promotion that claims to be building itself around athleticism. Louis Acosta, the WWF promoter in Montreal, better known to wrestling fans under his 2 ring names, either Gino Brito or Louis Sardon, was one of 4 men arrested last week in Montreal on extortion and loan sharking charges. According to an article in Le Journal de Montreal, Acosta, 51, and an ex-bodybuilder were arrested on charges of being collection agents for the loan sharks. Police are looking for a third collector and expect more arrests to be made. According to Montreal Lieutenant Detective André Lapointe, they've been working on this case for 3 months. Documents seized at Acosola's residence indicate he had more than 100 clients and indicated that in his best week he collected $31,400 in interest payments alone on loans from $50 to $59,000 and noted interest as high as 2,433% based on an annual rate. As Gino Brito, Acosola was well known among the Montreal sports community. His father was a well-known area wrestler who used the ring name Jack Britton. He later, as a worker in the 1970s, was a frequent babyface tag team champion with Dino Bravo, who was billed as his cousin locally and appeared for a time as a spokesperson on local Subaru auto commercials. Even in the 70s, he was part owner of the old Grand Prix promotion based in Quebec. Brito had a few WWF stints using the ring name Louis Sardon. In the 60s, he was mainly a jobber, but came back in the late 70s and held the WWF tag team titles with Dom DiNucci. He ended up cutting back on wrestling in the early 80s, and was the owner of the International Wrestling office in Montreal. Rick Martel and Bravo also had an interest in the early and mid-1980s, before the promotion went under and he slid to the WWF where he had been the local promoter for several years. There were 2 major head-to-head confrontations over this past weekend, Friday night in Houston and Saturday night in Los Angeles. WWF and WCW went head-up with WWF drawing an estimated $40,000 house, around $3,000 paid, at the Summit for Flair vs. Warrior. WCW had Ron Simmons vs. Rick Rude and a Sting vs. Cactus Jack Lumberjack match which, if Sting won, would give him a lights-out match with Jake Roberts as the double headliner and drew about $11,000, maybe $1,000 paid, to the Sam Houston Coliseum. The next night in Los Angeles saw WWA/EMLL run the Cal State Los Angeles gym using Canadian Vampire Casanova and Atlantis, who are the EMLL's 2 biggest cards, as part of a headline trios match, and drew a surprising 4,500 with tickets topped at $20, so the gate should have been near $70,000 because there were said to have been few comps. The big gate no doubt convinced the local promoters to stick with EMLL rather than making the switch to AAA for the October 31st show which had been talked about. It says something for a group that has been off local television for 5 months to be able to draw a crowd of this size. The October 31st show may be a hard draw because based on what I've seen, this is very much a family audience crowd and Halloween night you are competing with trick or treating. The imports from Mexico City for that show will be Rayo de Jalisco Jr., Atlantis, Pirata Morgan and the Espectros. WWF did well head-up, drawing $7,300 and $112,000 to the sports arena for the first Flair vs. Hart match. Although it did have strong support with Savage vs. Ramon, it does say something about perhaps the audience wanting to see good wrestling matches, because that's the lure Flair Hart had because it was a cold match with no angle, since business has been so far down across the board and this cold match has outdrawn all but a few shows with hot main events. The Flair Hart match, which went 23:45 was said to be 4.5 stars, had the finish with Flair causing a ref bump, and while the ref was down, Hart put him in the sharpshooter, Scorpion. The ref got up and signaled for the bell and the place popped since it was the first time they had probably seen the dusty finish in years. Actually, they never made it clear what happened as they announced Hart as the winner but gave Flair the title, although one of the local television stations on the 11 p.m. news announced Hart had beaten Flair for the title at the sports arena. Cable television ratings continue to set record lows. For the weekend of October 3rd to October 5th, the average rating threatened the all-time record low set just a few weeks back, 1.70 average, just ahead of the record low of 1.68. However, the share average percentage of the audience watching television during that time slot being tuned into the wrestling show, as opposed to the rating which is the percentage of total television households tuned in, for wrestling did set a record low. The 2 WWF cable shows, Primetime and All-American, each did 1.7 ratings, which would be their all-time low. It was the least viewed episode of Primetime for a non-holiday evening in history. The WCW shows did a bit better, but not much, with Main Event doing a 1.9, WCW Saturday Night doing a 1.8. This was the show with the Gordy and Williams vs. Wyndham and Rhodes Tag Team title match, and Power Hour a 1.4. New Japan, which opened its tag team tournament series on Thursday night, also put tickets on sale at 10 a.m. this past Saturday morning for Fantastic Story in Tokyo Dome, the January 4, 1993 show. On the first day, approximately 10,000 tickets were sold, priced from $24 up to $240 for a card that probably won't even be announced for a few months. Results: October 2nd, San Bernardino, N. 150 Greg Regalado D. Walking Weapon, Thunder Machine B. Lynx, Rick Sadist B. Primetime Peterson DQ Larry Ludden and El Toro Bravo B. Jolton Jason and Jason Redondo, Thrashmaster v. Scott Cole. October 3rd Sayreville, New Jersey, UWA, 713, Chris Candido v. Johnny Rotten Cheetah Kid b. L.A. Gore, Little Louie b. Mighty Doom, Cousin Luke b. Jumbo Holiday DQ, Misty Blue b. Linda Dallas, Bam Bam Bigelow b. Mike Sharp, Wild Samoans Ofa and Samu b. Warrior Crash and Tahitian Kid. October 3rd Houma, Louisiana, All Pro, 49, Joey Jackson b. Johnny Rose, Dale LaPerouse b. Frogman LeBlanc, John Delon b. Dale Wolf, Joey Jackson b. Road Warrior 1 Battle Royal. October 3rd Granite Falls, North Carolina, Fantasy Pro 80 Chief J. Eagle b. Lee Hamrick, John Sullivan and KC Thunder b. Mighty Drifters, Terminators b. Jimmy Diamond and Coal Miner, Street Fight Chris Lendell b. Jeff Hamrick, Ricky Starr b. Jeff Victory. October 3rd Chatsworth, Georgia, Mountain Wrestling Federation, Intruder b. Southern Rebel, Young Stallion and Steve Strong b. New Centurion and Mr. Frankie, CM Quick b. Golden Eagle, Hurricane Willie and Russian Nightmare b. Randy Steele and Woody Woodchuck, great name, David Young d. Scotty Flamingo, Larry Santana b. Pat Rose. October 4th El Toreo in Naucalpan, UWA, Babyface and El Rudo and Ray Richard b. Lasser and Rocky Santana and Gran Apache I, The King and El Colosso and Celestial b. El Engendro and Crazy Stars I and 2, Los Reyes Dominicanos and Dr. Wagner Jr. b. El Signo and Black Power 2 and Negro Navarro DQ, Scorpio Sr. and Scorpio Jr. and Buffalo Allen, Bad News Allen, B. Black Scorpio and Viano Trace and Enrique Vera, Mil Mascaras and Dos Caras b. Kinect and The Killer Core. October 5th Sue, All Japan 2050, Mitsuo Momoto b. Satoru Asako, Rusher Kimura and Mighty Inoue b. Haruka Eigen and Motoshi Okuma, Dan Crawford and Doug Furness b. Jun Akiyama and Masa Fuchi, Nigel Towers and Steve Williams b. Akira Tao and Ryuma Izumida, Rory Funk and Giant Baba b. Abdullah the Butcher and Giant Kimala 2, Patriot and Ken Kobashi b. Danny Spivey and Johnny Smith, Jumbo Tsuruta and Yoshinari Ogawa b. Terry Gordy and Richard Slinger, Mitsuharu Misawa and Toshiaki Kawada and Tsuyoshi Kikuchi b. Stan Hansen and Johnny Ace and Pete Roberts. October 5th Memphis, USWA Eric Embry b. Mike Miller, Bill Dundee b. Billy Travis, Tom Pritchard b. Brickhouse Brown DQ Dream Warriors b. The Hornet and Tony Falk, Elizabeth the Rodeo Queen b. Moondog Fifi DQ, Reno Riggins b. Tasmaniac DQ, Mr. Hughes and Jeff Gaylord b. Tony Williams and Robert Gibson, Brian Christopher b. Danny Davis to win GWF LTHWT title, Black Hearts DDQ Junkyard Dog and Jim Duggan USWA Tag title, Moondogs b. Jerry Lawler and Jeff Jarrett DQ. October 6th Gainesville, Georgia WCW Pro Taping, 1100 non-squash results, Brad Armstrong b. Diamond Dallas Page, Rick Steamboat b. Scotty Flamingo, Rick Rude b. Van Hammer, Tony Atlas b. Pez Watley, Armstrong and Hammerker Vinny Vegas and Page, Ron Simmons and Sting and Dustin Rhodes b. Cactus Jack and Barbarian and Atlas. October 6th Okayama, All Japan, 3,350 sellout, Mitsuo Momoto b. Masao Inoue, Mighty Inoue and Rusher Kimura b. Motoshi Okuma and Haruka Eigen, Danny Spivey b. Ryuma Izumida, Dan Crawford and Doug Furness b. Pete Roberts and Nigel Towers, Dory Funk and Patriot b. Giant Kimala 2 and Abdullah the Butcher, Toshiaki Kawada and Tsuyoshi Kikuchi b. Yoshinari Ogawa and Jun Akiyama, Steve Williams and Terry Gordy and Richard Slinger b. Stan Hansen and Johnny Ace and Johnny Smith, Giant Baba and Mitsuharu Misawa and Kena Kobashi b. Jumbo Tsuruta and Masa Fuchi and Akira Tao, Kobashi pinned Fuchi 29-17. October 7th Osaka, All Japan, 5,500 Mighty Inoue and Rusher Kimura b. Haruka Eigen and Motoshi Okuma, Masa Fuchi and Jun Akiyama b. Richard Slinger and Johnny Smith, Pete Roberts and Patriot b. Nigel Towers and Danny Spivey, Giant Baba and Dory Funk b. Abdullah the Butcher and Giant Kimala 2. Asian Tag Team title, Kena Kobashi and Tsuyoshi Kikuchi b. Dan Crawford and Doug Furness, Kikuchi pinned Furness 2023, Mitsuharu Misawa and Toshiaki Kawada b. Stan Hansen and Johnny Ace, PWF World and International Tag Titles, Jumbo Tsuruta and Akira Tao b. Terry Gordy and Steve Williams, Tao pinned Gordy with Golden Arm Bomber 25-38. October 7th Greenville, North Carolina, WOW, Rob Van Dam b. Grappler Bambi b. Peggy Lee Leather Wahoo McDaniel b. Longhorn McQuaid, Van Dam 1 Battle Royal. October 8th Royston, Georgia, WOW, Rob Van Dam and Chaz Rocco b. Bruce Force, Bambi b. Lady X, Junkyard Dog Kerr Night Stalker. October 8th Bristol, Virginia, SMW Dixie Dynamite b. Killer Kyle, Bobby and Jackie Fulton b. Dutch Mantel and Jimmy Golden, Brian Lee B. Night Stalker SMW title match, Tim Horner b. Dirty White Boy DQ, Rock and Roll Express b. Stan Lane and Tom Pritchard in non-title match. October 8, New Orleans, WCW 1400, Eric Watts b. Scotty Flamingo, Shane Douglas and Van Hammer b. Arnold Anderson and Bobby Eaton, Mike Graham d. Dick Slater, WCW Tag Title, Barry Windham and Dustin Rhodes b. Barbarian and Tony Atlas, Brian Pillman b. Brad Armstrong, Lumberjack match, Sting b. Cactus Jack, WCW Title, Ron Simmons b. Rick Rude, Lights Out match, Sting b. Jake Roberts. October 8, Tokyo Korakuen Hall, War, Tenryu d. Kabuki 15 minutes, Tenryu advanced by Hamaguchi decision, Ishikawa b. Masao Orihara, Tenryu b. Tatsumi Kitahara 3rd place match, Kitahara b. Orihara, 1st place match, Tenryu b. Ishikawa 441 Dragon Sleeper. October 8, Yokosuka, New Japan 2500 Koji Kanemoto b. Ishizawa Satoshi Kojima b. Nakagata, Hiroyoshi Yamamoto b. Otani, El Samurai and Jushin Liger b. Norio Oniga and Dean Malenko Osamu Kido and Hiroshi Hazi b. Hiro Saito and Tatsutoshi Goto, Kengo Kimura and Shiro Koshinaka and Masashi Aoyagi b. Tatsumi Fujinami and Masachono and Takayuki Tsuzuka, Shinya Hashimoto and Kensuke Sasaki b. Tony Halme and Pegasus Kid, Tag Tourney, Scott Norton and Super Strong Machine b. Tom Zenk and Jim Neidhart, Machine Pin Zenk Diving Headbutt 1113, Keiji Muto and Bam Bam Bigelow b. Masa Saito and Riki Chashu. October 8, Shizuoka, All Japan 2600 Sellout, Mitsuo Moto b. Satoru Asako, Haruka Eigen and Motoshi Okuma b. Rusher Kimura and Ryuma Izumata, Dan Crawford and Doug Furness b. Yoshinari Ogawa and Mighty Inoue, Johnny Ace b. Nigel Towers, Dory Funk and Giant Baba b. Abdullah the Butcher and Giant Kimala 2, Steve Williams and Terry Gordy and Richard Slinger b. Pete Roberts and Danny Spivey and Patriot, Stan Hansen and Johnny Smith b. Kena Kobashi and Jun Akiyama, Jumbo Tsuruta and Akira Tao and Masa Fuchi b. Mitsuharu Misawa and Toshiaki Kawada and Tsuyoshi Kikuchi, Tao Pin Kikuchi Powerbomb 2526. October 8, Tampa Aikwa 122, Mickey J. b. Tommy Starcore, Coconut Savage Kid Dragon, Dr. G and Billy Mack and Stormtrooper b. Rick Thames and Sonny T and Mad Bill Payne Dud, Jimmy Backlund b. Jim Magnum 3/4 of a star, Mark Star b. Lou Perez to retain Aikwa LTHWT title 1 star. October 9, Houston WCW 1000, Eric Watts b. Scotty Flamingo, Shane Douglas and Van Hammer b. Arnold Anderson and Bobby Eaton, Mike Graham d. Dick Slater, WCW Tag Title, Barry Windham and Dustin Rhodes b. Tony Atlas and Barbarian, Brian Pillman b. Brad Armstrong, Lumberjack match, Sting b. Cactus Jack, WCW Title, Ron Simmons b. Rick Rude, Lights Out match, Sting b. Jake Roberts. October 9, Ebbets, Kentucky SMW Dixie Dynamite b. Killer Kyle, Bobby and Jackie Fulton b. Robert Fuller and Jimmy Golden, Brian Lee b. Night Stalker, SMW Title, Tim Horner b. Dirty White Boy DQ, Rock and Roll Express b. Stan Lane and Tom Pritchard DQ. October 9, Springfield, Tennessee, USWA 120, Tony Falk b. Doug Gilbert DQ, Eno Riggins b. Eric Embry DQ, Bill Dundee b. Mike Miller, Billy Travis and Gilbert and Miller b. Falk and Riggins and Dundee, Jeff Jarrett and Embry b. Jeff Gaylord and Mr. Hughes. October 9, St. Louis, WWF 4000, Repo Man b. Virgil, Legion of Doom Animal b. Double Trouble, Tatanka b. Mountie, Earthquake b. Ted DiBiase, Bret Hart b. Papa Shango, Nails b. Big Boss Man, Razor Ramon b. Randy Savage Core. October 9, Aguascalientes, AAA, Kendo Star and Rey Mysterio Jr. and Pantrita Del Ring b. Rocco Valente and May Flowers and Rudy Reyna 3¼ stars, Misterioso and Volador b. Tony Arce and Volcano DQ to win Mexican Tag Team titles 40 minutes 1½ star. Mexican Middleweight title, Blue Panther b. Super Astro 4½ stars. October 9, Arena Mexico in Mexico City, EMLL, prelim results unavailable, Los Brazos b. The Infernales in non-title match, Black Magic b. Pierre Roth Jr. October 9, Plant City, Florida IWF, Kevin Catlin b. Sean Kieran, Randy Fuller b. Nuclear Assassin No. 1 Thor, Randy Rhodes b. Nuclear Assassin No. 2 Chris Proctor b. Java Rook, Long Riders b. Cliff Anderson and Denny Brown, Chubby Mo Cool b. Possessor. October 9, Arecibo, PR, WWC, Equalizer b. Angel Negro, El Bronco No. 1 b. Muhammad Hussein, Iceman Ricky Santana, El Vigilante DQ German Stormtroopers b. La Ley and Cyclone Salvadorino, Rex King b. Solid Gold 14 Carat, Ray Gonzalez be solid gold 24-karat DQ, Invader number 1 and Miguelito Perez be Dick Murdoch and Fidel Sierra. October 9th Dallas Sportatorium GWF, 2,500/ almost exclusively freebies. Mike Dahl be Animal, Calvin Knapp be Shaka Warrior Larry Green. Johnny Mantell be Booker T DQ, Rody Powers, Ron Powers. Kermani Fernandez, Brave Sky be John Tatum. Butch Reed be Rod Price DQ. Ebony Experience be Shaka Warrior and Action Jackson. Lottie D be Mad Madeline, John Hawk be Black Bart. Killer Tim Brooks and Fernandez be Tribal Nation. Steve Simpson be Alex Porto, Maniac Mike Davis. B. Doll, Texas Death Matt Brooks be Stevie Ray. October 9th Matsumoto, New Japan, 3,630 sellout. Osamu Nishimura be Otani, Pegasus Kid and Dean Malenko be Koji Kanemoto and Satoshi Kojima, Hiro Saito and Tatsutoshi Goto, and Norio Onaga be Hiroyoshi Yamamoto, and Black Cat and Kantaro Hoshino, Masashi Aoyagi be Masanobu Kurisu DQ, Kengo Kimura and Shiro Koshinaka and Akatoshi Saito be El Samurai and Takayuki Tsuzuka and Keiji Muto, Bam Bam Bigelow, and Scott Norton and Super Strong Machine be Tatsumi Fujinami and Masa Saito and Osamu Kido, Tag Tourney, Hiroshi Hazi and Kensuke Sasaki be Tom Zank and Jim Neidhart. Hazi pin Zank Northern Lights Suplex 1414, Tag Tourney, Masa Chono and Tony Hall be Shinya Hashimoto and Riki Chashu. Chono made Chashu submit to SDF 1417. October 9th Tokyo Korakuen Hall, All Japan, 2,100 sellout. Giant Baba and Rusher Kimura be Haruka Eigen and Motoshi Okuma, Dory Funk and Yoshinari Ogawa be Nigel Towers, and Pete Roberts, Stan Hansen and Danny Spivey be Abdullah the Butcher and Giant Kimala 2, Mitsuharu Masawa and Jun Akiyama be Dan Crawford and Doug Furness, Steve Williams and Terry Gordy and Richard Slinger be Patriot and Johnny Ace and Johnny Smith, Jumbo Tsurita and Akira Tao and Masa Fuchi be Kena Kobashi and Tsuyoshi Kikuchi and Toshiaki Kawada, Tsurita pin Kobashi 3-back suplexes 2049. October 10th Alexandria, Louisiana WCW 1650 Eric Watts be Scotty Flamingo, Bobby Eaton be Dick Slater, Brian Pillman be Brad Armstrong, Dustin Rhodes be Arnold Anderson, Barbarian and Tony Atlas be Van Hammer and Shane Douglas. Lumberjack match, Sting be Cactus Jack, WCW title, Ron Simmons be Rick Rude, Lights Out match, Sting be Jake Roberts. October 10th Los Angeles Sports Arena WWF, 7,300, Virgil B. Skinner 1 3/4 stars, Crush B. Papa Shango DQ 1/2 1 star, Earthquake B. IRS 1 star, Razor Ramon B. Randy Savage Core 1 3/4 stars, High Energy B. Beverly Brothers 1 1/2 star, Shawn Michaels B. Tito Santana 3/4 star, WWF title, Bret Hart B. Ric Flair DQ 4.5 stars 2345. October 10th Los Angeles CSLA Gym, WWA/EMLL, 4,500, Lynx and Flash B. Tornado Negro 2 and Thunder Machine Core 2.5 stars, Capitan Oro and Titan B. Estampa Brava and Gory Chavez Core 2.5 stars, Superstar Jr. and Ultra Taro B. Tornado Negro and Chamaco Rebelde Core 2.5 stars, Loverboy and Apollo Navarro and Marco Polo B. Pilato Suicida and Silver King and El Texano 3.5 stars, Canadian Vampire Casanova and Atlantis and Mercurio B. Pirata Morgan and Emilio Charles Jr. and Cesar Sando Jr. 3 stars. October 10th Nashville, Tennessee, USWA, 350, Reno Riggins B. Doug Gilbert Bill Dundee B. Billy Travis, Elizabeth the Rodeo Queen B. Moondog Fifi DQ Riggins and Dundee B. Black Hearts DQ, GWF LTHWT title, Brian Christopher B. Danny Davis, USWA tag title, Moondogs B. Jeff Jarrett and Eric Embry. October 10th Chatsworth, Georgia MWF, Randy Steele B. Mr. Knoxville, CM Quick and Young Stallion B. Mr. Frankie and Intruder, Gangster Tony Vendetta, Tony Marrow, brother of Johnny B. Bad B. Mark Payne, Larry Santana B. Frankie, Party Boys DDQ New Centurion and Hurricane Willie. October 10th Douglasville, Georgia, All South, 125, The Blaster B. Miracle Worker, The VB Johnny Dare, Lee Thomas B. Glenn Gilbernetti, Scott Studd B. Jailhouse Rocker, Billy Black B. Joey Maggs, Mike Kurvich and T.A. Golden B. Escapee Blade and ex-convict Snake. Lights Out match, Tommy Rich B. Steve Lawler. October 10th Kamagane, New Japan 1,500 sellout Norio Onaga and Hiro Saito B. Koji Kanemoto and El Samurai, Hiroshi Hazubi Masanobu Kurisu, Masa Chono and Takayuki Tsuzuka and Kensuke Sasaki B. Kengo Kimura and Shiro Koshinaka and Akatoshi Saito, Tatsumi Fujinami and Masa Saito and Osamu Kido B. Dean Malenko and Pegasus Kid and Tony Halme, Tag Tourney, Riki Chashu and Shinya Hashimoto B. Tom Zenk and Jim Neidhart, Hashimoto Pin Zenk 809 Tag Tourney Bam Bam Bigelow and Keiji Muto B Super Strong Machine and Scott Norton, Bigelow Pin Machine 1135. November 10th Ponce PR, WWC German Stormtroopers BL Boring Kano and Cyclone Salvadorino, Iceman B Muhammad Hussein, WWC Tag Titles, Rex King and Ray Gonzalez for Solid Gold, Equalizer B Lale, Caribbean Title Miguelito Perez B Fidel Sierra, Universal Title Invader No. 1 DDQ Dick Murdoch. October 10th Nagaoka All Japan, Motoshi Okuma and Haruka Eigen B Rusher Kimura and Ryuma Izumida, Mighty Inoue B Satoru Asako, Pete Roberts B Masao Inoue Dory Funk and Giant Baba and Jun Akiyama B Abdullah the Butcher and Giant Kimala 2 and Nigel Towers, Dan Crawford and Doug Furness B Patriot and Johnny Smith, Stan Hansen and Danny Spivey and Johnny Ace B Terry Gordy and Steve Williams and Richard Slinger, Akira Tao and Yoshinari Ogawa B meets Suharu Masawa and Tsuyoshi Kikuchi, Kenta Kobashi and Toshiaki Kauda B Jumbo Tsuruta and Masa Fuchi. October 10th Toriyama, All Japan Women, Cynthia Moreno B Kumiko Makawa, Yumiko Hata B Kwaro Ito, Bull Nakano and Bat Yoshinaga B Debbie Malenko and Saki Hasegawa, Asia Kong B Suzuka Minami, Akira Hokuto and Itsuko Mita and Mima Shimoda B Tashio Yamada and Kyoko Inoue and Takako Inoue. October 10th Portland, Oregon, USA, Al Madrill and Damian Knight B Carl and Jim Pope, Mike Winner D Billy Two Eagles, John Rambo B Buddy Wayne, Mike Winner B Bart Sawyer to win TV title Tornado match, Jesse Barr and C.W. Bergstrom B Ron and Don Harris. October 11th Tokyo Korakuen Hall, FMW, 2100 sellout, prelim results unavailable, Katsuji Ueda B Eiji Ezuki Erika Tsuchiya and Yukari Matamari B Nabano and Megumi Kudo, Dr. Lucer and Cowboy Billy Johnson B Tarzan Goto and Great Punk, Street Fight Tornado match, The Gladiator and Sabu and Horace Boulder B Atsushi Onita and Samba Asako and Ricky Fuji, Onita won 11-man Street Fight Battle Royal. October 11th Dallas Rocket Palace, Big D, 72 Jimmy James D Prince Kaloa, Ray Evans B Carl Colt, Eric Fontaine B Billy Steele DQ, Scott Braddock B Dino Hernandez Braddock and Ray Evans B Fontaine and Hernandez, Gary Young and Randy Rhodes Kerr Eric Embry and Big D. October 11th Yokohama Bunka Gym, All Japan, 4,900 sellout Motoshi Okuma and Haruka Eigen B Rusher Kimura and Ryuma Izumida, Pete Roberts and Nigel Towers B Mitsuo Momoda and Mighty Inoue, Dan Crawford and Doug Furness B Jun Akiyama and Tsuyoshi Kikuchi, Patriot and Danny Spivey B Giant Kimala 2 and Abdullah the Butcher, PWF Junior title, Masafuchi B Yoshinari Ogawa 1443, Stan Hansen and Johnny Ace B Toshiaki Kawada and Kenta Kobashi, Hansen Pin Kobashi Lariat 2305, Giant Baba and Dory Funk and Jumbo Tsuruta B Steve Williams and Terry Gordy and Richard Slinger, Mitsuharu Masawa B Akira Tao. October 11th Tochigi, All Japan Women, prelim results unavailable, Bull Nakano and Suzuka Minami B Kyoko Inoue and Takako Inoue, Akira Hokuto B Bat Yoshinaga, Yumiko Hata and Tashio Yamada and Saki Hasegawa B Asia Kong and Debbie Malenko and Kwaro Ito. October 11th El Toreo in Naucalpan, UWA, Ray Richard and Rocky Santana and El Engendro B Lasser and El Mathematico Ian Celestial Scorpio Jr. and Shu El Guerrero and Crazy Star IB Transformer and El Colosso and Viking Death Missionaries B Buffalo Allen and Los Reyes Dominicanos Ian 2 DQ, Mil Mascaras and Dos Caras and Villano Trace B Zando Khan and Dr. Wagner Jr. and The Killer, Black Scorpio B Scorpio Sr. in Mask vs. Hair match. October 11th Hanover, Germany, CWA, Bruiser Mastino and Mad Bull Buster B David Taylor and Steve Regal, Colonel Brody B Rip Rogers, Buffalo Patterson, Daryl Peterson, B Larry Cameron Core, Rambo B David Finley, Jimmy Snuka B Tony St. Clair, Rambo 1 Battle Royal. October 11th Arena Mexico in Mexico City, EMLL, Los Caifanes Ian 2 B Aguila de Plata and Misterio Tapatia, Guerrero de la Muerte and Guerrero del Futuro and Damian El Guerrero B El Filoso and Ciclone Ramirez and Aguila Solitaria, Maria del Angel and La Diabolica B Xochitl Hamada and Lady Apache, Ringo Mendoza and Mano Negra and Huracan Sevilla B Supremo Ian Titan and El Hijo del Gladiador, Mascara Magica and King Haku and Ultimo Dragon B Bestia Salvaje and Negro Casas and Gran Marcus Jr. October 12th Memphis, USWA, Howard Jeffrey Gaylord B Tony Falk, Mr. Hughes B Randy Rhodes, Doug Gilbert Kerbilly Travis, Bill Dundee and Eric Embry B Black Hearts DQ, Danny Davis B Brian Christopher to regain GWF LTHWT title, Butch Reed beat Junkyard Dog to win USWA HWT title. Jeff Jarrett and Bushwhackers beat King Killer, Jerry Lawler and Moondogs. October 12 Matsumoto, All Japan Women. 1500, Bat Yoshinaga beat Kumiko Makawa at Tsuko Mita and Mima Shimoda beat Suzuka Minami and Manami Toyota. Debbie Malenko and Takako Inoue and Saki Hasegawa beat Asia Kong and Kwaro Ito and Miori Kamiya. Yumiko Hata beat Akira Hokuto. Toshio Yamada and Kyoko Inoue beat Bull Nakano and Tomoko Watanabe. October 12 Saskatoon, Sask. WWF Superstars taping. Non-squash results. Big Boss Man B. Nails, Tito Santana D. Terry Taylor. Max Moon B. Louis Spiccoli. Marty Jannetty b. Mike Sharp, Money Incorporated b. High Energy, Rick Martel b. Jim Brunzel, Shawn Michaels b. Brunzel, Crush b. Papa Shango, IC title, British Bulldog b. Repo Man, Randy Savage and Ultimate Warrior b. Money Incorporated Core, WWF title, Bret Hart b. Ric Flair to win title, Warrior b. Kimala. Special thanks to Steve Prozik, Dan Paris, Ken Barrett, John Corrigan, Ron Lemieux, David Hanna, Dan Farron, Lloyd Lee, Brian Hildebrand, Steve Dr. Lucha Sims, Freddie Fargo. AAA. The Blue Panther vs. Super Astro match for the Mexican middleweight title took place on October 9 in Aguascalientes and was said to have been a legit classic with more than 50 near falls before Panther blocked a suplex and got the pin with a small package. The match airs this coming Sunday on Galavision. On the same card, Volador and Misterioso won the Mexican tag team titles from Tony Arce and Vulcano with a gimmicked finish where Rocco Valente, Arce and Vulcano second, pulled the mask of Rey Mysterio Jr. Volador's team second, and the ref called it disqualification in a match which lasted 40 minutes and wasn't that good. Since unmasking someone is an automatic DQ in Mexico and titles can change hands on disqualifications in wrestling pretty much everywhere except in North America, it was kind of a cheap way to do a title change. The October 16th television taping will have Mysterio Jr. vs. Valente, a mask vs. hair match and a title rematch with Volador and Misterioso defending against Arce and Vulcano. The November 21st debut show at the 30,000-seat Palacio de los Deportes in Mexico City right now is figured to be headlined by Conan El Barbaro vs. Cien Caras in a loser-must-retire match. AAA and AEMLL are combining for a show on November 20th at El Toreo in competition. Love Machine, Art Bar, is on the booking sheets and should debut within the next 10 days. Plan is to continue the Machine vs. Blue Panther feud which sold out Arena Mexico for the mask match and was never resolved, because Panther jumped to this promotion. Eddie Guerrero's start date should be toward the end of the month, as a babyface. This is interesting since brother Chavo Guerrero debuted on Friday night as a heel, and because Mascara Magica, Eddie's ring name EMLL, just started a new program with Bestia Salvaje on Sunday. Also inner women wrestlers Neftali and La Monster, Monster Ripper aka Rhonda Singh. Raul Reyes had to cancel all 5 of his shows this past week because of the strike by the SNL union against any arena using non-union, which means all AAA wrestlers who have their own union performers. Also this group had to cancel shows in Tijuana and Querétaro on Friday and Thursday night. At press time, Reyes was scheduled to run his weekly shows this coming weekend, although negotiations are taking place Tuesday so it's not a definite. Dandy had a meeting with AAA President Antonio Pena on Monday. Sandokan turned down this group's offer, as did Lasser, to remain with UWA. This group currently has nobody that would be considered an American, although Conan grew up in Florida and Misterioso is from California right now but is interested in Pegasus Kid and Lightning Kid, but there have been no negotiations. There have been talks with Bob Orton about coming in early 1993. The wrestlers Danny Boy, Robin Hood and Korak will be put together as a Ninja Turtle trio. This group is close to a deal to run regularly in Mexico City's Disneyland starting in November. There were a pair of dressing room shoot brawls over the past 2 weeks, none of which were publicized in the press. Fantasma and Mascara Sagrada got into it. Fantasma came out looking the better, which earned both men not only 15-day suspensions, but Pena was so intent on teaching the wrestlers a lesson that he forced the two, who don't get along, to form a tag team. In addition, La Parca had been challenging both Super Muñeco and Super Raton, neither of whom responded to his challenge. Then during a match, La Parca kept calling Muñeco and Raton and partner Super Pinocchio the 3 little pussies in the ring, and Pinocchio and Parca wound up trading real blows in the ring with Parca's mask off, and fans weren't supposed to see his face, but instead of hiding his face as they normally do, he kept punching. They erupted again in the dressing room when supposedly Parca sucker punched Pinocchio, but Pinocchio managed to grab an ankle and got on top and was punching Parca until the wrestlers broke it up. They were also both suspended for 15 days. El Hijo del Santo started filming a new movie on Monday called Santo, La Leyenda del Enmascarado de Plata, which will be the movie biography of El Santo, the most famous wrestler in Mexican mat history. Santo Jr. naturally plays the role of El Santo. EMLL. The October 9th Arena Mexico show was supposed to be headlined by a cage match, which I've heard of being held in Monterrey, but not in Mexico City, with Black Magic vs. Pierroth Jr. However, the Mexico City Boxing and Wrestling Federation refused to allow the promotion to do the match, saying they didn't want Mexican wrestling to turn into the circus it has become in America with the different crazy stipulation matches. I'm sure some will find irony and others much humor in that statement, considering the ring outfits and work style used in Mexico. They wound up in a regular match with Magic using a low blow behind the ref's back to win the third fall. The lure of the cage did bring the house up, but it was nowhere near full. Same show saw Los Brazos beat the Infernales, Satanico and Pirata Morgan and MS1 to earn a shot at the CMLL Trios title on October 16th. October 11th Arena Mexico was headlined by King Haku and Mascara Magica, Ultimo Dragon beating Gran Marcus Jr. and Bestia Salvaje and Negro Casas when Magica pinned Salvaje in the third fall to set up Salvaje defending the CMLL middleweight belt against Magica either on October 18th. The item listed here a few weeks back about actress Stephanie Salas being linked with Vampire was somewhat exaggerated. Apparently the two went out for 2 months, but newspaper reports of an engagement were just mainly something to fill space in the gossip magazine, since both are major celebrities in Mexico City. La Sirenita retained her Mexican ladies title, beating La Diabolica on October 9th in Mexico City, but they've got a rematch October 14th. Nitron has been fired. UWA. The October 4th El Toreo show in the semifinal saw Scorpio Jr. and Scorpio Sr. team with Buffalo Allen, Bad News Allen, to win 2 straight falls from Black Scorpio Charles Skaggs and Villano Trace and Enrique Vera to set up the hair vs. mask match with Scorpio Sr. vs. Black Scorpio on October 11th, which Black Scorpio won. Scorpio Sr. bled like crazy in the third fall and the doctor came and stopped the match. However, Scorpio Sr. begged the ref not to stop it because he'd lose his hair, and the ref signaled for the match to restart. Scorpio Sr. still lost when Black Scorpio did his top rope splash. It seems the next step is Scorpio Jr. putting up his mask against Black Scorpio. Main event on the October 4th card saw Mil Mascaras and Dos Caras beat Kinect and the Killer when Mascaras, in his early 50s, did a dive off the top turnbuckle with a flying body press to the floor onto Killer and manager Andy Barrow, and Killer was counted out of the ring. That same tag match was headlining most of the house shows this past week. Death Missionaries had a UWA Trios title defense on October 9th in Netzahualcoyot against Silver King and El Texano and Gran Hamada. It was announced that if Lasser doesn't defend his lightweight title against Ray Richard before November 1st, then he'll be stripped of the title. Apparently this was self-defense for fear Lasser would jump to AAA without dropping the belt, but it now appears Lasser is staying put. El Tori Infernal is not Butch Masters, but Rochester Roadblock. All Japan. The 20th year anniversary tour continued with major shows this past week on October 7th in Osaka, which didn't sell out, and October 11th in Yokohama, which did. Because this is a special tour, Giant Baba pulled himself out of his normal prelim 6-man tags and into main events and semi-finals. For instance, on October 6th in Okayama, Baba teamed with Mitsuharu Misawa and Kena Kobashi to beat Jumbo Tsuruta and Akira Tao and Masa Fuchi. Baba has also worked mid-card teaming with Dory Funk against Abdullah the Butcher and Giant Kimala too. Jun Akiyama started doing jobs on October 5th in Sioux, teaming with Masa Fuchi to lose to Dan Crawford and Doug Furness, and did several more before the week was out. 3 title matches this past week, all ending with the champions retaining. The Osaka card was headlined by Tsuruta and Tao keeping the PWF World and International Tag titles, beating Terry Gordy and Steve Williams in 25-38 when Tao pinned Gordy with a golden arm bomber. Kobashi and Tsuyoshi Kikuchi kept the Asian Tag titles, beating Crawford and Furness earlier in the card in 2023. In Yokohama, Fuchi kept the PWF Junior title, pinning Yoshinari Ogawa. October 4th TV airing the opening night of this tour drew 3. September 2.7 rating, still well below par. New Japan. New Japan did announce on October 6th, or 2 days before the tour was to begin, that Big Van Vader wouldn't be in because of his knee injury, and he and Tatsumi Fujinami couldn't defend their 1991 win. Fujinami didn't even announce his new partner when the announcement was made. On opening night in Yokosuka, Fujinami announced his partner would be Minobu Nakanishi, who would be making his pro debut on Tuesday night in Higashi Osaka with Fujinami against Scott Norton and Super Strong Machine. and the next night faced Bam Bam Bigelow and Keiji Muto. Nakanishi represented Japan in the Barcelona Olympics at 220 pounds in freestyle wrestling. Since he's going to be groomed to be a superstar for the late 1990s, and so is All Japan's Akiyama, both of whom are debuting at about the same time. The trivia question is that when both were amateurs, Nakanishi beat Akiyama in the Olympic trials to make Barcelona. Dean Malenko debuted, as we expected last week, on this tour on October 8, teaming with Norio Oniga to lose to Jushin Liger and El Samurai. Liger is currently out of action due to a family emergency. After the first 3 nights, tag tournament standings are Bigelow and Muto 1-0, Masachono and Tony Halme 1-0, Hiroshi Hazi and Kensuke Sasaki 1-0, Machine and Norton 1-1, Shinya Hashimoto and Riki Choshu 1-1, Fujinami and Nakanishi 0-0, Tom Zenk and Jim Neidhart 0-3. The Skinheads finally lost their first tag match on October 10 in Kamagane when the trio of Shiro Koshinaka and Kengo Kimura and Akatoshi Saito lost to Chono and Sasaki and Takayuki Tsuzuka when Chono put Saito in the STF. Road Warrior Hawk is scheduled to start here in November. Other Japan notes. The probable legitimate paid attendance for the October 4 PWFG show at the Tokyo Dome was closer to 18,000 than the 25,000 we reported here last week. The Universal promotion, which featured mainly Lucha Libre wrestles along with Jerry Lynn and Lightning Kid from the US, announced on Tuesday that it would be folding after the November tour, with the final show being on November 27 in Iwate. Many of the Universal Japanese wrestlers will then be joining Michinoku Pro Wrestling, which is the promotion we reported last week would be opening in late November. Hisatsune Shinma, who ran the Universal office, said that he would be starting up a new promotion sometime in 1993. It was pretty obvious in August that this group was in financial trouble. Wings and some of the other smaller groups are in danger of going in the same direction, since a country of this size can't support this many promotions indefinitely. The mystery team facing Toshio Yamada and Manami Toyota on the November 26 Kawasaki card will be JWP wrestlers Dynamite Kansai and Mayumi Ozaki, which would be the first All Japan Women vs. JWP match ever. LLPW on October 30 at Korakuen Hall has Shinobu Kondori vs. Norio Tatano, Rumi Kazama and Miki Handa vs. Eagle Sawai and Hosuke, and Harley Saito vs. Yukari Osawa. Inichiro Tenryu won the War One Night tournament at Korakuen Hall on October 8, which only drew about 1,000 fans. After the card, Tenryu challenged Riki Choshu to come to the October 23 Korakuen Hall show. New Japan the next day released a statement saying Choshu wouldn't be attending the show. War also announced Ashurahara would return on Thanksgiving night at Korakuen. Upcoming War dates are October 18 in Itame with Tenryu and Takashi Ishikawa vs. the Berserker and Koko Ware, Ultimo Dragon vs. Javier Cruz and Masao Urihara, and Tatsumi Kitahara vs. Pierroth Jr. and Kabuki. October 20 in Obihiro has Tenryu and Dragon vs. Kabuki and Pierroth, Ishikawa vs. King Haku, Berserker vs. Yashiro Ito and Orihara, and Kitahara vs. Cruz and Owen Hart. October 21 in Sapporo has New Japan wrestlers Aoyagi and Koshinaka and Kimura vs. Tenryu and Kitahara and Orihara, Dragon vs. Hart, Berserker vs. Kabuki. Japan Television Rundown. September 14 All Japan. 1. Crawford and Furnace beat Kawada and Kikuchi when Crawford pinned Kikuchi with the Tiger Driver. Double arm suplex dropped into a powerbomb. The arena this was taped in was obviously 400 degrees, as the wrestlers were drenched in sweat and the fans weren't reacting because of the heat and humidity. So actually, even though the work here was excellent, it didn't come off as good as it really was due to lack of crowd reaction. 3 3/4 stars. 2. Tsuruta and Tao beat Patriot and Jackie Fulton when Tsuruta pinned Fulton with a back suplex. 2 stars. 3. Gordy and Williams beat Misawa and Kobashi in 22:50. It started slow and was actually kind of dull early. At one point Williams did 3 press slam reps on Kobashi and turned it into a power slam. At 16 minutes the match got hot and it turned into an excellent match with near falls and lots of crowd excitement. Kobashi was really hot here. Williams did a new maneuver never seen before on Japanese or US television, a belly-to-belly superplex while standing on the top rope, same move Steiners do except standing on the top instead of the middle, on Kobashi. Crowd went nuts when Kobashi kicked out of that and Williams' Northern Lights suplex. Kobashi came back with some near falls on Williams before Williams put him away with the Oklahoma Stampede. 4 stars. September 21 All Japan. 1. Gordy and Williams beat Patriot and Kobashi. They got heat on Kobashi early, which was great. Patriot tagged in and he and Gordy missed one spot after another together. Once Kobashi tagged in, the match got a lot better. They did a lot of exciting near falls, ending when Patriot missed his missile, Wardy hit a clothesline for a near fall and got the pin with a power bomb. 3.5 stars, 2. Misawa and Kawada and Kikuchi beat Tsuruta and Tao and Ogawa in 22:35 when Kawada made Ogawa submit to the stretch plum. Same stuff as usual, which isn't a complaint, only a description. 3.5 stars. September 28, All Japan, 1. Ogawa pinned Kikuchi in a match to determine the next shot at Fuchi's junior title. Fast-paced match, although it's obvious Kikuchi is the better of the two. All kinds of near falls. Really exciting ending when Kikuchi missed a flying body press off the top rope and was pinned by a bridging back suplex. 3.75 stars. 2. Kawada made Tao submit to the stretch plum to earn the October 21st title shot at Misawa. Tao pile drove him on the table in the first 2 minutes. Turned into a stiff match with a lot of good submission moves back and forth. Tao used a DDT on the floor after removing the mats. Kawada kicked out of Tao's armbomber, then got his foot on the ropes on the second try, and reversed the third try with a lariat to the back of the head. Kawada got a facelock, but Tao made the ropes. Tao made the ropes when caught in the stretch plum. All the holds they do are over, so it made this an excellent match. Finish saw Tao go for another golden arm bomber, similar to a choke slam, but Kawada reversed it into a stretch plum in the middle and got the submission at 18:45. 4 stars. USWA. Butch Reed captured the USWA title from Junkyard Dog on October 12 in Memphis. The supposed GWF light heavyweight title, Danny Davis still has the actual belt since GWF stopped booking him without having him lose the title, changed hands twice with Brian Christopher winning on October 5 in a match where Christopher put up his hair, but Davis putting up his hair for the rematch on October 12 and regaining the title. Jerry Lawler was announced as being suspended for 1 week and fined. On the October 5 card, Lawler and Jeff Jarrett had an anything goes match against the Moondogs for the USWA tag titles. Ref Paul Neighbors tried to stop Lawler from using a piledriver, banned in USWA. Lawler ended up giving Neighbors a piledriver, which resulted in a DQ in a no DQ match and also piledrove Richard Lee. Eddie Marlin said that Lee went to Mike Samples, who owns a percentage of the USWA, and got the board of directors to suspend Lawler, so I guess the Samples angle is still ongoing. Lawler said he'd be in Memphis on October 12, even though he couldn't wrestle. They announced the main event for October 12 of the Bushwhackers and Jeff Jarrett vs. Moondogs and Richard Lee. Bushwhackers did a taped interview talking about coming to Memphis on September 9, although Lawler covered for the gaff saying the guys are so crazy they don't even know what date the card is. Nate the Rat Nathaniel Whitlock did an interview and said there was nobody he hated in wrestling more than Lawler and was bringing in a wrestler called the King Killer to get back at Lawler. Nate offered Lee the King Killer to be in the 6-man tag main event. Marlon then came out and said the contracts were signed and he wouldn't allow it. Burt Prentice then came out and said Samples had gotten the word and the board of directors had already okayed it. Eddie Gilbert quit the promotion. The story we got is that he asked for a nightly guarantee and was turned down. Prentice is now managing the Howard Hughes connection, which he says is as a favor for Jimmy Hart. Later in the show, after the Moondogs had left the studio, Nate came out with King Killer again and he unmasked himself to reveal Lawler. Nate said there was one person in wrestling he hated more than Lawler, and it was Lee. The October 5 crowd was poor, although part of the reason was it was the first Monday after the fair, which traditionally doesn't draw. SMW. The television show this week opened with Tim Horner doing an interview bandaged up saying he had suffered a concussion from being hit with the bottle by Dirty White Boy, was told not to wrestle for a few weeks, but said he wanted White Boy so bad he was going to wrestle his scheduled house show bouts to gain revenge. White Boy's manager Ron Wright then claimed that White Boy was simply acting in self-defense and that some of the glass caught his eye and that now he may be going blind. Ron Garvin came out with the robe he stole from Paul Orndorff, but cut it like a dress and wore it around and kept saying it was the robe of Miss Wonderful, Paula Orndorff. Orndorff came out but was held from going after Garvin. Television Maine saw the Heavenly Bodies keep the tag titles, beating Danny Davis and Dixie Dynamite when Tom Pritchard kicked Dynamite with his loaded boot. Bob Armstrong did an interview and had another letter from the mystery man called the Master, Kevin Sullivan, and said that the reason he hasn't been able to eliminate Brian Lee is because whenever Lee gets in trouble, his friends save him, so he's now putting a bounty out on anyone who saves Lee as well as Lee. The local Samoan attacked Lee, as did Night Stalker, but Rock and Roll Express made the save. Tracy Smothers was also scheduled to debut at the October 12 tapings. Rock and Roll announced they had a surprise for Cornette next week. At the house shows, Rock and Roll have been beating bodies in non-title matches because of the court injunction that bans Armstrong for signing Rock and Roll to any tag title matches. Texas. There is a new ESPN schedule starting the week of October 19th. Up-to-date global tapes will air on Mondays and Tuesdays when the show isn't preempted. Any show that would air Wednesday through Friday will be an old USWA tape from Dallas with new introductions taped by Harvey Martin, a former Dallas Cowboy football star who dabbled in pro wrestling a few years back. This seemed to be hinting of an Ebony Experience breakup. Butch Reed, who was announced as being suspended for life when he quit the promotion to join WCW some weeks back, was brought back on Friday and wrestled Rod Price. Mike Davis is back to doing the Maniac Mike gimmick. He was Michael Worthington Davis' trace for a few weeks. He's now going to feud with Steve Simpson. Bob Dunkam's son, billed as Cowboy Bob Duncombe Jr., made a save for Big John Hawk when Black Bart and Johnny Mantell were hanging him. This group is now off local television. Big D looks to be in for a new start. The October 11th card headlined by Gary Young and Randy Rhoads versus the return of Eric Embry and Big D drew just 72 fans. Chris Love is out as booker and will become more involved in the USWA under the Burt Prentice name. Terry Sims, Hill manager Freddie Fargo, Tasha Simone Love, who is the woman in Memphis as Elizabeth the Rodeo Queen, and Eric Fontaine are all gone with Love out as booker, and it's expected that Randy Rhoads, Sean Stevens and Ray Evans will follow. Here and there. Former WCW employee Don Glass is negotiating with the American Gladiators to set up tours. John Arezzi appears to be off-web for the present due to a lack of sponsorship but will remain on Niggin New York Weekly. Road Warrior Hawk and Kensuke Sasaki are scheduled to work as a tag team on a November 9th PWA card in Fridley, Minnesota. Dennis Corralizzo and Larry Sharp's WWA have a show on October 24th, day before Havoc, at the Route 30 Mall in Philadelphia with Spider defending the WWA title against the Tank. Ike is scheduled to run a joint show with Larry Sharp on October 24th in Tampa, and Sharp's first solo venture with his new students from the Florida Monster Factory is scheduled for October 31st. Nawa is already off Sports Channel America, or at least shows billed as Nawa have come off as tapes of old UQ. Portland Wrestling is now on Prime Sports Northwest, but Sandy Bar is running about 5 cards per month, mainly every Saturday night at the Sports Arena, drawing about 200 per week. Mike Winter beat Bart Sawyer on October 10th to win the group's TV title. Steve Dahl was fired, well, actually simply just not being booked right now, for changing finishes and angles while regular booker Jesse Barr was in Japan. Because of the frequent Japan tours, the wrestlers, while not particularly skillful, all worked very stiff. But nobody brought back Japanese moves. The best example of this was the October 3rd card where Jesse Barr took 4 shoot chair shots in order to get juice. Blading is illegal in the state of Oregon and punishable by having the promotion's license revoked temporarily, which did happen once with Don Owen. He got the juice both from his forehead and from the back of the head when one of the chairs didn't hit the mark quite right. The matches are also immediately stopped when someone bleeds. To the October 3rd 2 of 3 fall match with Barr and C.W. Bergstrom versus Ron and Don Harris ended with Barr's team up 1-0 with Barr's team losing because he was bleeding and the bout was stopped. They announced a tournament for the International Tag Team titles starting October 17th. Get a load of these claims. They say tournament matches will take place in the US, Japan, Korea, Mexico, Canada, and Australia. Each tournament team has 10 matches, of at least 4 must take place outside their home country. They have a point system and the 2 teams with the most points square off for the title. Matches on October 17th have Barr and Ryuma Go versus Harris Brothers, John Rambo and Tim Flowers versus Billy Two Eagles and Mike Winter, Heavy Metal Incorporated No Idea versus Sawyer and Buddy Wayne, Alma Drill and Damian Knight versus Carl and Jim Pope. The Geraldo Rivera show, in which Tom Hankins was the guest talking about Pat Patterson and Vince McMahon, aired on October 13th. Corset Korchenko and Al Lender are running a group called Colorado Championship Wrestling out of Colorado Springs, Colorado, using mainly fly-ins from Florida. Next show is Thanksgiving night. Debut card last week drew about 200. Dennis Galan is running UWA on November 20th in Elizabeth, New Jersey. The WWC Universal title was held up after an October 10th match in Ponce, Puerto Rico between former champ Invader No. 1 and Dick Murdoch. Ricky Santana, who lost a loser leaves town match in Puerto Rico, is back under the hood as Iceman. Sports Channel New York has been airing old Bill Watts UWF tapes from the mid-'80s at 4:30 p.m. Sundays. Greg Price's WOW will run shows as part of a fair in Augusta, Georgia, October 29th to October 31st with Rob Van Dam, Smothers, Patriot, Night Stalker, PN News, Junkyard Dog, Wahoo McDaniel and Billy Black. Randy Riggs and Steve Lawler are running All South Wrestling in competition to Sam Kent's North Georgia group. Manager Stephen DeTruth had a rough night on October 10th. In Douglasville, Georgia, one fan ran into the ring and grabbed the chain he had tossed to Lawler. Another grabbed another chain out of his packet. Another fan yanked him off the ring apron. Others were kicking and swinging at him. If it wasn't for the legendary John Horton to save the day, he'd have ended up as target practice for chair-throwing fans. WWA has a show at the YMCA in East Los Angeles on October 17th using Beyond a Trace. Chris Adams is running shows October 24th in Palestine, Texas, November 14th in Broken Bow, Oklahoma, and November 26th in Sulphur Springs, Texas. WWF. Dick Glover, Vice President of Titan Sports who was in charge of all overseas operations, which means he's the one responsible for overseeing Europe, was hired by ESPN as Senior Vice President of ESPN Enterprises. Undertaker is out of action again. I believe he's already undergone surgery for bone chips in his left arm and shoulder and will be out for an estimated 8 weeks, which means he's out of the pay-per-view show as far as wrestling. The injury won't be acknowledged because they feel it'll ruin the character, as he was at television doing interviews. He's being replaced by Crush, Jim Duggan and Animal in his scheduled singles matches at the various houses. Flair missed the second night of television in Regina, Saskatchewan. The Legion of Doom vs. Nasty Boys matches of late have been Animal and handicap matches against Double Trouble, since Nasty Boys were also still out of action as of the weekend. It doesn't appear to be a lock that Animal and Crush will become the new Legion of Doom. There are many different possibilities, one that Animal will pick a new partner, and reportedly the partner of his choice would be his younger brother, or that Animal would work as a single, or that Animal and Crush would become the new team. Kokina is now using the ring name Yokozuna, which is Japanese for Sumo Grand Champion. He'll be doing ex-sumo wrestler gimmick. At least he looks the part. Marty Jannetty returned to television Monday night coming out of the stands to attack Shawn Michaels, and he wound up breaking the mirror of Sherry's head, which means probably the end of the mirror gimmick. Mondo Clean debuted under the name Damien Demento. Matt Bourne was wearing a clown outfit similar to JWP's Bolshoi Kid backstage, but I don't believe he worked any matches, but he did come out in front of the crowd. Correction from last week's Observer. The Boston crowd last week we reported as 4,000 was in reality closer to 5,800, while Springfield, Massachusetts we reported as 3,500 was closer to 2,700. Berserker also returned to television with his suspension from going AWOL and England running its course. He'll be going on a Japan tour this coming week for War. Max Moon, Paul Diamond, looked excellent as far as hot-looking moves in his television squash that aired on Superstars over the weekend. They even gave him multicolored hair extensions like Conan. The Dino Bravo retirement match scheduled for December 4th in Montreal has been postponed. The postponement came just days after the arrest of Gino Brito. Phil Apollo is scheduled to come in and work as an injury replacement with Jim Powers, who is also basically in the same role. Titan is sponsoring a fitness expo in conjunction with the Los Angeles Raiders soon in Los Angeles. Hulk Hogan and Ric Flair were both at the Gold's Gym convention in Los Angeles on October 6th. WCW. Jake Roberts did his first job since coming in losing to Sting in Lights Out matches at the house shows this past week. After doing the jobs, Roberts pulled out the snake and teased a breakup with Cactus Jack. The gimmick was that Sting would wrestle Cactus Jack in lumberjack matches, and if he won, he'd get a lights-out match with Roberts, who he also beat. Paul E. dangerously returned at the tapings October 6th in Gainesville, Georgia, doing an interview which runs on television on TBS Saturday. Dangerously basically said the Dangerous Alliance, Rude, Austin, Anderson and Eaton are still together and gave some reason why they hadn't been around. During the interview, Tony Schiavone says something to the effect that Rick Rude wants to talk with Paul and Paul simply walks off in the middle of the interview. Michael Hayes will be producing new theme music for all the major WCW wrestlers. This apparently includes new theme music for the guys like Ron Simmons, Sting and Johnny B. Bad who don't need new music. Masa Chono is booked October 22nd in Cincinnati and October 23rd in Cleveland against Anderson. On the 900 number, Jim Ross hinted at a return of Terry Funk to challenge for the NWA title. Never say never, but I don't think this is likely. Apparently Funk and WCW settled Funk's lawsuit in regard to allegedly being forced back in the ring with a broken back during the 1989 feud with Ric Flair out of court. Dory Funk was hired to scout for new talent. Add Tex Salinger to the list of wrestlers headed in. Tony Atlas looked terrible on his TV debut and apparently looked no better at the house shows, but on Tuesday did an interview challenging Ron Simmons, which looks to be a likely Clash main event for November 18th. Just hope they have a strong undercard and don't put that match on last. Super Invader Hercules is gone. Greg Valentine walked out Monday rather than do a 4-minute job on television for Sting. It isn't that Valentine refused to do the job as much as he got the new booking sheet and saw that his name wasn't on it for any dates, so he decided why do the job when it appeared he was finished up either way. Dick Slater will also be gone within a few weeks. Vinny Vegas is getting a new lease as he and Diamond Dallas Page are going to work a B-Team program in November with Van Hammer and Marcus Bagwell. Bagwell broke his nose, so he missed television Tuesday where they were scheduled to begin the angle. Instead, Brad Armstrong beat Page in a match where both Hammer and Vegas interfered, leading to a tag match which was a double count out. Missy Hyatt did another short sound bite on a current affair this past Tuesday night with Jason Hervey talking about Madonna again. WCW will get its television time back in Richmond in December. Big Van Vader and Rick Steamboat are scheduled for November house show dates, as are Ron Simmons vs. Barbarian. Jake Roberts was to appear October 13th on a Nashville network talk show. Watts did a great interview explaining how stipulation matches and lights-out matches came to be in the 1960s, talking about Eddie Graham. It not only made sense out of something which on the surface doesn't make sense, but even seemed to have some historical accuracy. The promotion of the Havoc pay-per-view at this stage of the game is far better than the promotion of the Bash, although some of that will be negated because less people are watching television now. On television Saturday, they said Barry Windham was late for unexplained reasons to tell why Rhodes and Armstrong were wrestling Pillman and Austin. When Windham showed up, he and Rhodes started arguing and they slapped each other, but then when Rhodes was getting double-teamed, Windham made the save. Good soap opera storyline. Still, from an overall standpoint, things just aren't working and there doesn't appear to be any real momentum or interest building to the Havoc. Medusa is doing a segment every Sunday talking about Chono. They showed clips of Chono's wedding and Chono playing soccer with kids. Wouldn't it be nice to air some complete matches with him from Japan as well? Second rhetorical question. A few weeks back they ran a nice feature on Kensuke Sasaki. Why, since that time, has his name never even been mentioned? Tony Schiavone's up close and personal segment on Saturday is awesome. The readers' pages. Tom Burke of 31 Groveland Street, Springfield, Massachusetts 01108 is working on an international directory of wrestling offices with addresses, phone numbers and bookers. He's looking for information on Mexico and anywhere else. Pam Irving of 77 Torella Drive, Keeler Downs, Victoria, Australia 3038 is looking for the December 84/January 85 issue of WWF Magazine and all pre-April 1984 issues. Dave Prozik of 2278 Hidden Creek CT, Lisle, Illinois 60532 publishes the newsletter Outside Interference for $6 for 4 issues. The newsletter consists of several opinion columns. Larry Doyle of 3712 Woodruff Avenue, Long Beach, California 90808 is looking for any WWF matches with Pat Patterson, particularly with Bob Backlund, Ken Patera or Sergeant Slaughter, as well as any California matches with Patterson as a single or as a tag team with Ray Stevens. Bob Barnett of 3101 5th Street No. 2, Santa Monica, California 90405 has all kinds of Japanese and many other highlight tapes, some for sale and some for trade. Sasan Olukoya of Box 2965, Shomolu, Lagos, Nigeria has a listing of pen pals worldwide and for $2 you can be included in his list. Clint Freeman of 196E, 75th Street, New York 10021 has Japanese photos of magazines for trade. Send a SACE for a catalog. Uresh Homayun of 8800 Bel Air PL, Potomac, Maryland 20854 has beta tapes of Starrcade 86, Starrcade 87, Bash 87, First War Games, Crockett Cup 87, Crockett Cup 88, and hundreds of After mags from 1987-90 for trade. Brett Ray of 100 Chanticleer Drive #A301, Conway, South Carolina 29526 is looking for a WWF Dusty Rhodes action figure. Stephen Pinto of 15 Tigers CT, Mercerville, New Jersey 08619 has wrestling magazines from the 60s and 70s for sale. Brian Burkon of 710 Summerley Drive, Nashville, Tennessee 37209 is selling photos and a newsletter called Tennessee Pro Wrestling for $1.50. DC Chambers of 595 St. Clair Avenue West No. 3, Toronto ONTM 6C1A3 Canada is looking to get Japanese tapes and has Canadian Championship Wrestling tapes from the Maritimes from summer of 1992 to trade and a 1986 Stampede Wrestling tape. He's also interested in tapes of Memphis, Smoky Mountain, and Lucha Libre. Roy Lucier of 14322 Harrington Street, Garden Grove, California 92643 is looking for 1981-86 TBS stuff, particularly with Roddy Piper. Madison Square Garden. Saw in the Observer that Madison Square Garden televising of the WWF house shows has stopped. I can't see that helping attendance at all since the crowds dropped even farther when they switched from showing the cards live or next day to 1 week later. I can't figure out why Vince would cut out this lucrative revenue. John Jantz. Fresh Meadows, New York. DM, I believe it was MSG Cable, not the WWF, which made the decision, although WWF had been contemplating the same move 1 year back. There is some talk, because of cable viewer response, that MSG Cable may air 1 or 2 cards next year, but it appears the airing of every show is no longer in the cards. Titan Sports. With all the recent talk of financial cutbacks, what is the financial state of Titan Sports? Are they operating comfortably in the black? Can you see where in the future they may have a problem? Is Bob Backlund a viable draw in the 90s? If he continues with his old character of a fresh-faced, no-personality All-American, he'll get nowhere. Whatever happened to Hans Mortier, Raymond Roju, DJ Peterson, and Dutch Savage? Tom Wagner. Sound Beach, New York. DM, obviously wrestling-produced, house shows, merchandising, pay-per-view revenue for Titan Sports since April in North America is way below what projections would have been. As for the overall financial state, the North American house shows are hurting, TV ratings and pay-per-view buys are way down, and several time slots have been either lost or moved to less beneficial time slots, which means advertising revenue is probably down as well, and will be no doubt down even more drastically when it comes to the new year unless there is a turnaround. But there are savings as well with the folding of the WBF, which eliminates a revenue drain, and the positives of the lucrative European tours. Overall, the company doesn't give the appearance of being in as bad a condition as it was approximately 1 year ago when it had a major front office cutback, eliminating about 24 jobs and eliminated 1 touring troops. I've heard no talk of any office cutbacks or employees asked to take pay cuts, which would be an obvious sign of a financial problem, since the cutbacks 1 year ago. Wrestlers' payoffs are way down, but since they are paid on the houses and the houses are way down, that's to be expected. In the future, if the company doesn't reverse the current trend in the US, or if the bloom goes off the rose in Europe, yes, no doubt they'll be facing problems. Don't know what happened to Hans Mortier. Raymond Roju is retired and living in Montreal. Last I heard, Dave Peterson was selling cars in St. Joseph, Missouri, but that was a few years back. Dutch Savage, last I heard, was in the religion business around Idaho, but that also was a few years back. The problem with the WWF and its current slump is that the promotion has lost its sense of humor. They have gotten far too serious. The Big Boss Man Nails angle has no entertainment value. The implications of a family torn apart because of an intercontinental title match was shameful. The WWF needs some comedy. There is a time and place for everything, including a time and place for laughs. I still attend the live shows and watch the PPVs, but I don't watch the regular television shows anymore. Linda Wendt. Norwalk, California. Coach Kurt. I've been called a lot of things over the years, some of them actually true, but until reading your October 12th issue, I'd never been referred to as a liar in print. You write, in part, before Rezzy's convention, Coach Kurt said it was buyer beware and warned listeners that the names Rezzy was advertising for his convention wouldn't be there. It's one thing to have business disagreements or even business enemies. It's another to blatantly attempt to sabotage something with lies. First off, what business rivalry could I possibly have with Mr. Rezzy? As I understand it, Mr. Rezzy has a wrestling-related radio talk show which airs irregularly in the New York market. Among many varied projects I'm involved with is a wrestling hotline telephone program which is based in Detroit and is also available in the New York, Chicago, and United Kingdom markets. Where are we in direct competition? As for my August 8th commentary on Rezzy's convention, I opened by calling it wrestling's #1 fan convention. Hardly vindictive, I went on to give the date and place of the convention and gave Mr. Rezzy a ticket plug. I then said I should caution potential conventioneers because more than one source had told me not all of the advertised stars would attend. Like you, I know how to distinguish a reliable source from an unreliable source. Like you, I also know some good sources can sometimes be incorrect. When Mr. Arezi phoned by on August 11th to complain about my comment, which is the only time we've spoken to each other, I explained all of the above background relating to his convention. At that time, he insisted that Bruno Sammartino would be at his convention. Subsequently, a representative of my company directly contacted Bruno and confirmed that to be true. On my August 14th hotline message, I corrected my source's error. Your newsletter admitted Johnny Valiant was a previously advertised name who didn't attend. Inasmuch as Mr. Arezi mailed to me only an original list of personalities scheduled, never sent an amended list or included a contact phone number to confirm accuracy, how can anyone allege my sources were entirely incorrect or that I was attempting to sabotage Mr. Arezi's convention? I can assure you I wished him success during our lone telephone conversation, but I'll think twice about giving him a free ticket plug in the future. Coach Kurt Schneider. Southfield, Michigan. DM, I apologize for those remarks in the October 12th issue as they relate to Kurt Schneider. I didn't know the phone program had listed a correction. VOV Wrestling School. Found your comment about Angelo Poffo running the VOV Wrestling School in Largo interesting. But you don't have a real story of what's going on across the bay. While researching for a quick story on the VOV for a weekly area newspaper, we learned the following. While Angelo has lent his name to the VOV, they are telling all prospective students that Randy Savage and Lenny Poffo are with the organization and doing the training. We telephoned Titan Sports, and they denied that either Randy or Lenny were leaving. We telephoned the VOV and were again advised that Randy and Lenny were a part of the VOV and were going to be doing the training. It seems that Angelo's name is just a smokescreen to prevent Vince McMahon from finding out that Randy and Lenny are hedging their bets as to the future of the WWF. We are going to run this story in next week's issue and thought you might find it interesting. Bill McKee. Tampa, Florida. DM, or it could be the VOV is using Randy and Lenny's name as a lure to sign prospective students up to the school. Wrestling history. Who was the longest reigning NWA World Champion, Frank Gotch or Lou Thesz? Do you have any information on the formation of the NWA and its first champion, Frank Gotch? Dave Eilenfeld. Naperville, Illinois. DM, the National Wrestling Alliance was formed in 1948 by a half-dozen Midwestern promoters who were mainly smaller promoters banding together because in most of their city they had competition from a larger and more established promotion that controlled the big-name talent. The idea is they'd pool talent for their cards, thus would be able to offer more competitive cards, and would create their own world champion. Within a few years, their organization gained so much power that before long most of the major promoters in the world were loosely affiliated, and Lou Thesz was the closest thing to a universally recognized world champion as there has been since World War II. The NWA was the dominant power in the wrestling industry in much of the world through the 70s and remained the largest, although declining in importance both nationally and worldwide, until 1984 or 85. Since it wasn't formed until 1948 and Frank Gotch's career was in the early 1900s, he was never NWA champion. History written decades later made him the first NWA champion, and by then the NWA used and twisted history for its own purposes to claim to trace its organization and title back to 1905, although there is no truth to that claim. The worked version of wrestling and NWA title history put together in the late 40s or early 50s claimed Gotch as the first champion from a 1905 win over George Hackenschmidt in Chicago. However, the first Gotch-Hackenschmidt match didn't even take place until 1908. Gotch was billed in some circles as world champion in the U.S. from a 1905 win against Tom Jenkins in Cleveland. Jenkins was billed as world champion during the match, although most considered him simply American champion. Nobody took Jenkins seriously as a world champion since he was twice beaten by Hackenschmidt, once in the U.S. and once in Europe. Gotch lost and regained the title in 1906 matches with Fred Beal, which from the sounds of the finish and circumstances, the two may have been working a program for box office purposes even though working itself, by today's standards, hadn't really been invented yet. The first Beal match was the last bout Gotch, who many say was the most famous athlete in the U.S. during that time period, would ever lose. Hackenschmidt, originally from Russia, was recognized as the supreme wrestler in Europe, and his popularity had done wonders for wrestling in England in particular. The dream match, which would wind up with the first seriously recognized world heavyweight title match, took place in Chicago in 1908, with Gotch winning. Gotch retired undefeated in 1913 and passed away just a few years later. I believe Gotch's matches were pretty much legitimate. Since he was an American who was recognized as a legitimate world champion in his sport, the press created Gotch's reputation as the greatest wrestler of all time, although apparently most wrestlers, while acknowledging Gotch's skill, considered him a dirty fighter. By 1915, the sport started becoming more worked, with babyfaces, heels and gimmicks quickly being introduced over the next few years. Certainly by the 20s, the company that had a near monopoly on the business in this country, more so than any company has ever had since, run by Ed Strangler Lewis, who was generally kept as world champion and many considered to be the greatest shooter of them all, Tootsman, a supreme shooter who later was Vince McMahon SR's promotion partner through the mid-60s, and Billy Sandow, called the Gold Dust Trio, put together programs and worked finishes of the key matches. The three controlled the business until they went their separate ways in the 30s. The business quickly became more chaotic. By this time, wrestling was 99% worked. However, there were shoots and world title matches and titles changing hands when a challenger who was supposed to lose simply pulled a double cross. That's why the Gold Dust Trio tried to keep the belt on Lewis, because it was believed nobody could beat him legitimately and steal the title. The most famous example of this was when Lewis worked a program with Wayne Munn, a 6'6", 280-pound college football hero. That's one of the reasons the NWA kept going back to Thesz as champion at the time. It had branches worldwide, because they felt they needed a champion who could protect the title in a pinch. When the NWA became almost exclusively US and Japan, that feeling that the champion needed to be a legit wrestler who could protect himself against a double cross started fading away because the idea of stealing the belt apparently went away. Lewis put Munn over for the title, which Lewis was to get back as soon as they could exploit whatever box office they could out of Munn. However, Stanislaw Zbyszko, yes, that's where Larry Whistler stole his last name from, double-crossed Munn and the Gold Dust Trio in Philadelphia and annihilated Munn to win the title. Zbyszko ended up giving it up to Joe Stecher, who gave it back to Lewis, and the trio was back in control. College football at this point had become one of the most popular sports in the U.S. Pro football was barely existent. Munn was the first giant who couldn't wrestle a lick to be put over as world champion. A few years later, this pattern was followed again with Gus Sonnenberg and Bronco Nagurski, none of whom had any significant wrestling ability, but were put over as world champion because their football name meant box office. Lou Thesz first won what was known as the National Wrestling Association title in 1937, which at the time was the most widely recognized world title. He was 21, also the youngest ever world heavyweight champion. He only held the title for 6 weeks due to a contract dispute. He won and lost the title twice more in the 40s, including once dropping the strap to Nagurski in Houston. Thesz won the title for the fourth time on July 20, 1948 from Bill Longson in Indianapolis. At about the same time, the National Wrestling Alliance was formed by Sam Mushnick of St. Louis, who would go on to be the main power in the organization during much of its glory years, and 5 other Midwestern promoters. Thesz was Mushnick's rival promoter in St. Louis, although to the public the promoter was Martin Thesz, Lou's father. The alliance named Orville Brown of Kansas City, who not so coincidentally was one of the 6 promoters who formed the alliance, as the first world champion. Mushnick and Thesz shortly thereafter joined forces in St. Louis. At the same time, the association was losing power and the alliance gaining, most likely because the association was run by promotional dinosaurs who didn't see the change in the business due to television being invented, while the alliance was run by hungrier younger promoters who saw the changes, with most likely Mushnick being the most influential. The Thesz-Brown unification match was set for November 25, 1949, which Brown was going to win. However, Brown was involved in a career-ending auto accident before the match took place, so the alliance named Thesz to be the new champion. Thesz held the title until March 15, 1956 in a Toronto match with Whipper Watson. The 7-year, 8-month period from July 20, 1948 to March 15, 1956 is considered by historical revisionists as the longest consecutive NWA World title reign. It should also be noted that although history will say differently, Ric Flair actually had 9 reigns as NWA champion because there was a 2-day switch in New Zealand and Singapore with Harley Race, which would make Race 8-time champion, which was supposed to be kept a secret but actually happened, and the 1991 Fujinami angle from the Tokyo Dome in which Flair was recognized as WCW champion but Fujinami as NWA champion. From an official NWA standpoint, the last NWA champion before Masachono would have been Flair. When WCW fired Flair on July 1, 1991, they stripped him of the title, but the NWA Board of Governors, who actually have the power to decide the NWA champion, refused to go along with the decision and recognized Lex Luger, who was put over Barry Windham 2 weeks later for the vacant WCW title. Flair would have been officially stripped of the NWA title in early September of 1991, after he had signed the contract with Titan and Jim Herd got enough board of director votes to control the NWA title once again, which was mainly a political move to try and keep Flair from wearing the belt legally while working in the WWF, which the NWA/WCW eventually pulled off in court. The NWA title was vacant until Chono won it. That's the end of the issue. See you next time, wrestling fan. October 19, 1992 Observer Newsletter. Bret wins first world title from Flair. NWA title history. Thez. By Observer staff. Wrestling Observer Newsletter. P.O. Box 1228, Campbell, California 950091228. October 19, 1992. Bret Hart captured the WWF title in a last-minute decision from Ric Flair in approximately 25 minutes on October 12 in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan at the television tapings amidst much WCW-like booking on the fly chaos. Hart won the title by submission using the sharpshooter after a superplex in what was said to have been an excellent match. The title change will be announced on the syndicated shows this weekend, although I'm not certain of a television air date, but it could be as soon as the October 19th primetime show. The title change was a decision made within the last week because the WWF needed to get a babyface, and Hart in particular, over big time in a hurry because of uncertainty as to the long-term future of Ultimate Warrior, see below, and short-term because Undertaker isn't expected back after undergoing shoulder surgery this past week until mid-December. Hart and a few others apparently knew about it by midweek, although I'm not sure Flair was one of the few others. As it turned out, Hart both sprained his ankle